Welcome to Southern Sense Talk on Rumble. You are going to love Annie the Radio Chickadee Ublis and her co-host, C.S. Bennett. You'll find them live here on Fridays from 2:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Date Time. Check out their website at Southern Sense, as in commonsense.net. It's that easy, southernsense.net. So sit back and relax. They're informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey.
It does help if I add myself to the mixture here. I apologize. Welcome again to another misadventure on Southern Sense. You're watching us live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Rumble, and Substack, as well as our homepage, I hope. I'm waiting for someone to help me do a little programming to make sure it goes a little bit better, but hopefully we'll have our homepage, southernsense.net, up and running perfectly in the near future. I'm your hostess with the least mostest, the Radio Chickadee, Annie, and we're waiting for our co-host Curtis to show up. He has been doing some work with the VFW today. We got ourselves a lot of stories to cover, a lot of things to do. We have today two fantastic guests from Invest USA. Is the former president and CEO of Invest USA, Michael Letts. He's a national grassroots nonprofit organization that is helping hundreds of communities provide thousands of bulletproof vests for police forces throughout education, public relationships, sponsorships, fundraising. So it helps our men and women out there serving and protecting to be safe on the streets. He's also former law enforcement officer. He's also chaplain to our state police here, as well as a well-around knowledgeable expert on everything law enforcement happening across this nation. And from the Epoch Times, we have Janice Hisle, and she has been working on a lot on what has been going on with the Charlie Kirk assassination and other interesting stories on the Epoch Times. She's also a best-selling author of several books out there, and she was a former reporter for 2 decades, for newspapers in Ohio. So we got a lot of stuff going on today, a lot to talk about. And I hope you're going to sit back and relax and enjoy it today. Like I said, there's a lot going on with Charlie Kirk and all the outfalling of it. Questions about how we deal with our national security. There was a little bit of an uproar last week. Pam Bondi wanted to have social network sites being monitored and censored. There's a certain area where you start to invade our free speech in the Constitution. We had that with after 9/11, a lot of invasion, a lot of censorship. We don't want to go down that road again, but we do want to keep our nation safe. And if there is someone out there plotting an assassination, it seems that this has been something that may have been possibly in the works for a while. Yeah, if you keep your ears to the drums and listen, and you find that someone is plotting, then you have a reason for a search warrant for any law enforcement activity. But we can't cross the line on the First Amendment, much less the Second Amendment, which they're trying to do on that too, because a gun was used. So, of course, the crazies out there want to make sure that we no longer are able to defend ourselves with our firearms. But that said, we have a lot to talk about, a lot to do. And I've got a special dedication I built up today. And I normally have done this in the past, but not to the extent I've done it today. I would read aloud the names of the men and women that died from 9/11 related illnesses during the previous year. And I had done that last year, and I do apologize for that. To date, as far as we know, approximately 50,000 first responders have passed away from 9/11 related illnesses since the 9/11 attacks. not just those that died on that day or immediately afterwards from their injuries, but these are from illnesses that show up years later. And last year, we lost 24 law enforcement members. And I put it together this special dedication to each and every one. So sit back and please watch this dedication I put together.
Sergeant William A. Burkle, New York City Department, served 20 years, survived by his wife, son, daughter, mother, and sister. Special Agent Donald Raymond Cleaver, United States Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigations, served 28 years. Survived by his wife, son, brother, and sister. Detective Herbert Fonseca, New York City Department, New York. He was 72 years old and served 20 years. He has no known survivors. Lieutenant David J. McShane, New York State Environmental Conservation Police. Served 23 years, survived by his wife, 3 children, his mother, 3 sisters, and 4 brothers. Michael Ziddy Kurzini served 20 years, Elizabeth Police Department. He is survived by his wife, son, and daughter. Trooper Stephen A. Tyrell, New York State Police, served 26 years. He is survived by 3 children. Sergeant Paul R. Hargrove, New York City Police Department, served 35 years. He is survived by his wife, 2 daughters, 1 son, his sister, and 8 grandchildren. Sergeant Frank Semino served 21 years, New York City Police Department. He is survived by his wife, 2 sons and daughters, and 2 sisters, and a grandson. Officer Alfred George Williams served 17 years with the New York City Police Department. He is survived by his wife, 4 children, a sister and brother, and 6 grandchildren. Police Officer John Kilpatrick served 20 years, New York City Police Department, survived by his wife and a New York City Police Department member. John N. Collins served 24 years with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey Police Department, and he served 9 years as Chief of Police for the College of New Jersey, total of 33 years. He was survived by his wife, 2 sons, his father, and 2 brothers. Sergeant William E. McLean III served 8 years with the Town of Newburgh Police Department in New York. He is survived by his wife and daughter. Staff Sergeant Benedicto Albizzi Jr. served 33 years with the New York State Police. He is survived by his wife and 3 daughters. Gerald Nelson served with the New York City Housing Police Department for 22 years and helped with the merger to New York City Police Department and served for 20 more years, totaling 42 years. He is survived by his wife, 2 sons, a stepdaughter, a sister and brother, an aunt, and 2 grandchildren. Police Officer Anthony J. Mezzacapa Jr. served for 30 years in the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey Police Department. He is survived by his wife, 3 daughters, 2 sisters, and a grandchild. Patrol Kevin Canavan served 39 years with the Nassau County Police Department in New York. He is survived by his wife, son, daughters, and 4 brothers. Detective Kenneth B. Campbell served 20 years with the New York City Police Department, survived by his wife, 3 daughters, a son, and 7 grandchildren. Trooper Stephen P. Belito served 32 years with the New York State Police. He survived by his wife, 2 daughters, mother, sister, and brother, and 4 grandchildren. Clarence E. Word III served 20 years with the New York City Police Department. He is survived by his wife, daughter, son, mother, 2 brothers, and a sister. Detective Morris Mo Johnson served 26 years with the Norfolk Police Department in Virginia. He is survived by his wife, 3 sons, a daughter, and grandchildren. Special Agent in Charge, Joseph Love, served for 32 years with the United States Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Homeland Security Investigations. He was survived by his wife and child. Senior investigator John L. Carey served 32 years with the New York State Police. He is survived by his wife, 4 children, and 1 grandchild. Police Officer Philip J. Shafini served 28 years with the Nassau County Police Department. He has no known survivors.
Let it be said, when we finish this race, we kept them free, we led with grace. Let it be seen, from sea to shining sea, beautiful America, living our legacy. Oh, Father, mother, sister, brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation. Let us be known as people of honor, humble and bold, faithful through fire. Let us hold firm to our convictions with wide open hearts, eager to listen. Oh, Father, mother, sister, brother, let it be said, when we finish this race, we kept them free, and we led with grace. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for all the next generation. Let it be said, oh, father, mother, sister, brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for all the next generation.
You're watching Southern Sense live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Rumble, Substack, and unfortunately not on our homepage today. We're having a little bit of a problem getting it up and running. I'm waiting for my WordPress guy to get a hold of me and we can get that fixed. Hopefully that will be fixed soon. Curtis will be joining us in a short while. He is out helping his fellow veterans and should be with us very, very shortly, hopefully. In the interim, before we start the show, I talked about something that showed up on the internet the other day, a story by Fisher Jack, he calls himself, on EUR Web, something called the Pass the Charlie Kirk Gun Safety Act. And it's from a constituent in Indianapolis that proposed this thing. It's really, really hard to figure out who the heck is actually sponsoring this. They're asking that in Indianapolis, Indiana, Representative Carson and Senator Young and Senator Banks co-sponsor this legislation. And I doubt it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. But already Charlie Kirk is barely even gone, and they're already starting in with the gun ban acts. And this draft resolution, whereas the United States of America was founded on the principle that all persons are endowed with unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They don't state who endowed us with these rights, which is the Creator. They're making it sound like the government is the one that endowed us with these unalienable rights. But no, it was the Creator, not government. So catch this. This is the first thing you catch on this legislation. Whereas firearm-related violence has become a persistent and deadly threat to the safety, stability, and security of our communities, schools, workplaces, houses of worship, and public forums. Whereas the tragic and high-profile assassination of public figure Charlie Kirk underscores the growing risk of political violence and extremism within the United States. Now, you notice also on this that they're not saying where this political violence or extremism is coming from. And yet, no sooner was the assassin arrested and charged that everyone was saying he was MAGA. He was from the right. And the truth could not be further from that. Yes, his parents were conservative Christians. They were Mormons. I understand that his father, God bless him, and mother were the ones that turned him in, walked him into the station. He says, you got to turn yourself in and do the right thing. I understand he was former law enforcement. I understand they are registered Republicans. That does not make the assassin the same. His social network postings prove the exact opposite. And goes on now Whereas this tragedy reveals the urgent need to disrupt the chain of access to lethal weaponry, identify threats before they act, and uphold both the rights and responsibilities of lawful gun ownership. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say in the Second Amendment how you go about with lawful gun ownership. It's just that we, over time, through the Supreme Court, have established certain means, background checks and so forth, that if you are a felon, you cannot own a firearm. We've established those along the way and yet our Constitution has not been adopted, this is basically what it requires. So any attempt at restriction of gun ownership through attaching you to a group that they may feel is an extremism. That's right. The Tea Party group at one point was extremist. Anyone voting for Donald Trump was an extremist. We were called Nazis. We were called everything that was absolutely nothing to do with who we are. We were labeled extremists. We were censored on social media. We were censored in the public. We were reviled. And yet we still are here and still pursuing the rights of every single American, no matter where you stand politically. And this legislation does nothing to do that. Whereas existing bipartisan legislation efforts, including the Assault Weapons Ban of 2025, the Go Safe Act of the BUMP Act, the Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act, the Gun Violence Prevention Act, and the Bipartisan Background Checks Act have contributed to essential provisions towards safeguarding the public while respecting constitutional liberties. Nothing can be further from the truth. The assault weapons ban has proven to be unconstitutional because some states are saying that if you have a semi-automatic weapon that normally like police officers would carry, that's considered an assault weapon. If you can fire more than one round in rapid succession, they were trying to say that was an assault weapon. They were saying weapons that we used to go out hunting were assault weapons. Bump stocks also recently have been struck down. The Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act, there are 27 states trying to pull that off the books. Now, the right to bear arms, our Second Amendment, does not say it's restricted to whatever the states determine it to be. It's what the federal government and the Constitution determine it to be. What the Constitution states is what the law is. And yet you have states that are prohibiting citizens, like in, say, for example, in New York State, you have to jump through hoops and prove you need to have a firearm in order to purchase one and bear it. That's not what the Constitution says. And I'm hoping in the near future, states like that will be kicked out. Their laws will be kicked out. I don't mean kicked out of the union. Their laws will be kicked out. Some of these things are so antithetical to the Second Amendment. And to put Charlie Kirk's name on it, he would be insulted. He would absolutely be insulted. He would tear it up and laugh in their face and tear it apart. And further goes on, whereas no single law can prevent every act of violence, but a comprehensive framework combining regulation, education, enforcement, and evidence-based prevention have shown to reduce the likelihood, frequency, and lethality of gun violence. Now, if we break this down, there's one thing. According to them, combining regulation, there was nothing to prevent him from purchasing a firearm because there was nothing in his background at that point in time when his father gave him the gun. It would have prevented him from owning it. So there was nothing in his background that would have shown at that point. Education, he got a scholarship, a presidential scholarship. He was a straight A student. He was an ace. Enforcement, what enforcement? I mean, what is there? But now here they catch you. Evidence-based prevention. In other words, going on to social networks and seeing what you post. So in the past, if you posted a picture of a gun on a social network, your social net site would be pulled down. And yet this gentleman, loosely termed, went on to social networks like Discord and openly stated he wanted to assassinate Charlie Kirk. Openly stated he was doing this in support of his transgender gay lover. And yet they saw these posts up and they did nothing to do and nothing about that. And that's the same equivalent in free speech as to yelling fire at a theater. And yet no one posted a warning. But heaven forbid you or I were to post a picture of a firearm we just legally purchased and said, hey, look, I got this great deal. Look at this thing. It's wonderful. But we don't do that. We don't flash the brass. But yet this guy turned around and said he was going to commit this act, and yet no one notified the authorities, notified anyone of responsibility to say, hey, listen, you may have a problem here. Right? Whereas Congress has the constitutional authority and moral obligation to protect the lives of its citizens while preserving their liberties. Well, hey, listen, that makes a very, very lovely statement. But you're basically saying that it's okay for them to trample on our constitutional rights to protect the lives of citizens. No. You're not preserving our liberties, and you're not protecting our rights. Do you have a moral obligation to protect the citizens of the United States? Yes. But there are reasonable ways in which to do this, and this joke of legislation called the Charlie Kirk Common Sense Gun Reform Act is not the way to do it. The purpose is to enact a bipartisan, comprehensive framework to reduce firearm-related deaths and prevent political violence through responsible regulation, universal safeguards, and coordinated national strategies. Folks, if Charlie Kirk had this in his hand, I'm sure he would rip it apart better than I ever could. I wish I had half the talent that young man had. But here we go. Universal background checks require federal background checks on all firearms sales and transfers, including private sales, gun shows, consistent with the provisions of H.R. 18. And yet, they want to add into this, and I've seen this in several different places, a mental background check. And if you think about what some of these schools are trying to do, that children as young as preschool needing to go through mental screening. You've got teachers telling kids in preschool, oh, you may not be a little boy, you may be a little girl. These kids don't even know the difference between a boy and girl is yet, much less mature enough to make a decision whether or not to make such a life-altering decision without the knowledge of their parents. And yet they want to start screening kids in preschool and kindergarten mentally. Now, those screenings will follow them for the rest of their life. So now you're going to have a universal background check that may touch into those pre-screenings when a child is 4 years old, 5 years old. They don't know what they're talking about or they're saying. And that may be held against them for the rest of their life. This is a slippery slope. It sounds great, sounds wonderful until you start delving into it. The regulation of assault-styled weapons. Prohibit the future manufacture, sale, and import of semi-automatic assault weapons. I'm sorry. The Glock 9mm that most of my brethren carried on duty in NYPD, they would consider a semi-automatic assault weapon. Large capacity ammunition feeding devices. Well, now, that was also prohibiting them from carrying any more than 7 rounds. You're going up with a bad guy who may have 15 rounds in his clip, and you're going up with 7. Well, I went on patrol with only 6 rounds, and I wasn't feeling too comfortable going after someone with an semi-automatic weapon with 15 rounds in his clip. You don't send the good guys out there with inferior tools. And you and I, as legal citizens, we're the good guys. We're the ones that back up the cops when they go to do their duty. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten into some sort of a tussle and some good citizen stepped in to help, whether making a phone call or assisting in one way or another. And I'm sure every cop has a story about when a good citizen stood in the breach to give him a hand. You're taking away the ability for a citizen to do their civic duty, to protect and serve their fellow man. I mean, there's so much crap in this, folks. It's just, but they're already starting. Starting to go after our firearms. And like I said, this is just the start. This is just the start of what they're going in. There's a lot more I have in here, and I'm just hoping that Curtis can make it in here soon. We're waiting for our first guest to be calling in too. We have Michael Letts calling in. So there's a lot of this that I have put aside here is stuff I want to discuss with him. But there is also, you can't make some of this stuff up. Here we're talking about our infringement on our liberties and our rights. And if anyone knew that, it was Charlie Kirk, because the Biden administration literally really did try to put him out of business. His comments in on Truth Social came under the Senate Judiciary Committee, which revealed through Chuck Grassley recently that in the day that Kirk's organization had been that the teeth in backwards, I apologize, had been one of the Republican-linked groups targeted by something called Arctic Frost. Now, this began with the investigation into the Smiths electors charge against Trump. Now, you remember Jack Smith, who was investigating Trump's claim that he won the election, and we're saying he did. Everyone else is saying he didn't, and I still say he did, and I still say there was election fraud. So call me nuts. But we have been proven case after case in court that there has been election fraud. The Heritage Foundation has a section on their homepage that you can go. It's edited by Hans von Spakovsky, who has been investigating this since the first cry of election fraud has been out there. And he has proven time and time again that there has been election fraud, and people have been convicted and have gone to jail for election fraud, not only in 2020, but in 2018 and in other elections. Jack Smith and the Biden administration had tried to force Charlie Kirk and other people and movements out of business. They weaponized the Justice Department using certain things through this program called Arctic Frost. And Sandy Fitzgerald wrote this article in Newsmax, and she said she was also included in this witch hunt. They allowed the daughter of a judge in one of the corrupt trials against Sandy Fitzgerald to become the biggest fundraiser for Biden and former President Kamala Harris, and making millions of dollars for herself and her family. And her father, the judge, not only refused to recuse himself, but put a gag order on Ms. Fitzgerald, not allowing any talk about their family corruption and unprecedented conflict of interest. So, folks, this has been going on for quite some time. And thankfully, today we have Kash Patel and others trying to start to drain the swamp. And hopefully that will happen in the very, very near future. I'm going to take just a short break, and I will be back with you in just a moment.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, for the ramparts we and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're back. And guess what? We have the one, the only Curtis C.S. Bennett with us. God, I cannot even speak today. Holy moly. You know,
Hey, we all have those kind of days.
well, to bring you up to speed, we started off the dedication today. Last year, 24 members of law enforcement lost their lives to 9/11 related illnesses. And to date, somewhere in the area of 50,000 law enforcement officers have lost their, and other first responders have lost their lives to 9/11 related illnesses. And we will continue to honor these brave men and women that continue to die every day. And I'm saying, when it's all said and done, when the body count is finally made between the victims that lived near the areas of the attacks and contracted the illnesses, as well as first responders, I would say we probably would have close to 500,000 that die from the effects of 9/11. But with that said, excuse me, let's bring in the one and the only Michael Letts of InvestUSA.org. Good afternoon, Mike. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Ann. How are you? We love to be on your show. We love to hear from you. How are you doing?
All right.
Good, fantastic.
Well, you know, I started off the show, I was talking about some of the outrage that's been going on over the what's going on after Charlie Kirk. And they have this new legislation, some bimblehead proposed the establishment of the Charlie Kirk Common Sense Gun Reform Act. If that doesn't make you gag, I don't know what does. And I was reading some of it and I was starting to tear it apart. But, you know, it's written obviously by someone on the left that tries to make it sound that tries to make it sound bipartisan, but they call for the ban of semi-automatic firearms. But yet the weapons you and I carried on patrol could be considered semi-automatic firearms, which would make them illegal, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's always been their problem, is they always overreach, A, but B, they not just overreach. They've never been able to answer the basic question. You know, Ann, maybe your experience was different than mine, but I've never seen a gun shoot itself.
I got to admit, I posted this up on to my members because I've got the Tea Party meeting coming up on Monday, and I sent it out with a nice long newsletter. Someone on Facebook had put their hunting rifle on their front deck with a scope and just left it on the railing.
I saw that.
You saw that one. And so, yeah, Mr. Davis put it up, and I then copied it, crediting him with it fully, and I sent it out to my members. I said, you know, you can get fatter with a fork and spoon than you can with this.
It's amazing. You know, I loved what he said. He kept going out. His rifle had never moved itself, never changed positions, didn't do anything. We just sit there, you know, and that's what they can't seem to understand, man. It's not the weapon. I mean, if we're going to go down that path, we need to ban cars because we lose an awful lot of people with DUIs. Better ban some knives. I mean, we've had, you know, that stabbing in Charlotte on the train was with a knife. So that was just a little pocket knife. So we better ban shoot. I think people have been killed with rocks. We better ban rocks. I'm not so sure there's anything we can't have. if we go down that path. It's just amazing that frustration.
Didn't that clown go after Nancy Pelosi's husband with a hammer? So what? We're going to ban
Oh,
hammers?
thank you, Ann. I forgot of a very deadly tool there. We got to add that one to the list too. Hammers. Gonna be tough for you to have any construction done outside now because you won't be able to use hammers anymore.
What I would like the left to answer is this: when they talk about passing common sense gun legislation, what common sense gun legislation would have stopped this guy or anybody else that probably had access to a legal gun? What
Correct.
law ever stopped a person from killing another?
There is none. I mean, I think you raised the points. Yes, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Show me one case where banning a gun would somehow would have affected or prevented a crime, and you might even have my attention for a few seconds anyway. But you can't, because I mean, it's not the weapon; it's the person. And even when you ban them, the funny part about it, Ann, is just because you ban them doesn't mean that criminals say, "Oh, well, I don't want to break the law, so for whatever I'm going to do, if they're banned, I better not touch one." They'll make sure they have one regardless of what you do. They're going to utilize the technology that's available to give the upper hand against anybody they're trying to steal from or murder, etc. And that is just will always be that way. There's nothing you can do about that. That's why you have to make sure you have laws in place to ban their actions, hold them accountable, not the tools that they use.
Well, there was a study out, and I forget who did the study. I just heard it being quoted, but the bottom line was they went after individuals had been jailed because of gun violence. And when they did it, and they did the poll asking, well, would you have committed the crime had you had not owned a firearm? They said, well, yeah, we would have committed the crime anyway. But the bottom line was they said, how many of them committed the crime with a legally owned firearm? Only 2%. Only 2% of the crimes that were committed with by a firearm were by legally owned firearms, which only goes to prove that a good guy with a firearm can stop a bad guy with a firearm. And we've seen that time and time and time again in a lot of these school shootings, especially the one in Texas, I remember a couple of years back. A good guy with a firearm stopped the bad guy. And we've seen it in others inside the churches where a good guy stopped the fire. I mean, a good guy in the Annunciation Church with a firearm, how many more lives saved?
If we'd have had more people like that, even as of today, we have more people that are armed and trained to know how to use it. Obviously, you want to make sure the person knows what they're doing with the weapon. But we'd have less crime, period. There's no doubt in that, because, criminals are not stupid. They realize they're not going to go after a victim if they can find a victim that's not going to be able to push back. They don't want to risk injury to themselves. They want to be around for another day to steal some more. So, it's the only way we're going to reduce crime is to hold people accountable, not by doing. And they always take advantage of the emotional situations. Somebody's murdered, an officer's down, or their predominant person like Charlie is killed. They quickly jump on the bandwagon. It's that firearm that did it. If we could just eliminate those weapons, nobody would be killed. And that is just so far from the truth, Ann.
I've never taken a legal firearm off of anyone. I've only recovered illegal firearms.
Correct.
And I've had individuals where I'm running down the street chasing someone, and I will find a good guy at my side, a civilian that will turn around and go, I'm going to back up the cop. And I've had it. I know of 3 specific instances in this time I was on the street that, dag it, I mean, there's this individual would step up and say, hey, listen, I'm going to give you a hand. And at one point, it was someone trying to commit an arson. And my partner and I were trying to wrestle the gas can away from him. And the other good guy turned around and grabbed him so we can grab the gas can and stop the fire. It took a third person to do it. And you never know where a good guy is going to help you. And I'm not going to turn around to a good guy and say, well, don't stop, stand back, stand back. We've got this under control, when you don't.
Well, let me add this. Just the other day, we had 5 police officers shot, 3 killed in Pennsylvania. Where was the left then? Gun violence. Where were they at if gun violence is really the issue. We didn't hear them saying that on behalf of the police.
It didn't meet their narrative, quite frankly. And I think the interesting part about Pennsylvania is, and I'm still pushing for some answers from DC. Why did we contact the Mexican consulate? Why was the Mexican consulate contacted? Why
Yeah.
did they issue?
I never understood that part of it.
Well, we do know for a fact that that particular sector of Pennsylvania has an awful lot of large farms that use a lot of workers
And
and
migrant workers. Yep.
migrant workers. And my question is, how many of those migrant workers are
Are
here
here
illegally?
legally.
And they
Yeah.
didn't want to open up that can of worms, so they're trying to just downplay the whole situation. But what an insult to downplay the death of 3 outstanding officers and 2 that are in critical condition as we speak.
Yeah. They don't want to say it because someone who is here as a migrant worker or even illegally cannot own a firearm.
That's
I'm sorry,
correct.
they're not a legal resident. You can't do it. You're not a citizen. I'm sorry, you can't own a firearm. These
You know,
rights are for those that are citizens of these United States. You're not a citizen of the United States. I'm sorry. You are then the sovereign of the nation you come from.
you're exactly right. And what I'm smiling at, Ann, is if we could get that point for them to understand, it would solve so many other things. The House just passed a concurrent resolution to keep the government open through November, but the Senate has already said it's dead on arrival. And why is it dead on arrival? Because you remember we cut out of this year's budget, and so it would be current resolution would still have the same thing cut out, that no dollars can be spent for illegal immigrants. Well, the Democrats are insisting they want $1 billion put back in the budget to provide health care for all illegal immigrants. I mean, and of course, how they play it on the TV to you and I as American citizens, how can you support a Republican proposal that's going to remove health care from Americans and put them at risk? Their definition of American is not the real definition of American. American is an American citizen, not somebody who is here illegally and is a felon because of their illegal status. I shouldn't have to pay for their insurance.
And I'm looking at some of the stuff going in the chat room, and a friend of mine who happens to be a legal immigrant, that she's also a citizen, and yes, she's making some great comments. Removing firearms from law-abiding citizens would work wonderfully in Australia, didn't it? Thank you, Inez.
It's a matter of control. The liberal democratic ideology, he just wants that control. They're besides themselves that they lost it in November, and they're desperately trying to do whatever they can to get it back. And they're so distorted now. They're so out of touch with reality that their arguments don't even make any sense to the average American citizen who has at least some kind of common sense. But they're so devoid of reality anymore. It's scary that we even have people like that in this country, quite frankly. Yeah.
No, but under the previous administrations, the Obama administration, the Biden administration, we as conservatives have been censored. I mean, I got kicked off of YouTube, I think 3 times, Facebook, another 2 or 3 times. I found myself shadow banned on X, and finally I'm back up on X. And thankfully, guys, if you want to watch the show, the best way is go to at Southern_sense. You can find me up on X. We get fantastic hits there. Over 100,000 in some cases. Whew, on just one episode. So guys, because I'm having a problem on my homepage getting it up there, I'm still working with the programmer to get my page updated. But maybe we'll get the X up on the homepage. You can still follow me there. But we had been shadow banned. And we had been censored because we may have said something about COVID, or we may have said something about China that they didn't like. And oh boy, did I say a lot of that.
Well,
but heaven forbid you're Tyler Robinson and you put up on Discord that you want to assassinate a nationally known person and no one says anything. But isn't that like calling fire in a crowded theater? Should not that person who responded to that posting and failed to report it to authorities be an accomplice to the act?
I think they definitely should. And I mean, I think that's part of the problem we're having now, especially with our younger generation, because you've seen, of course, in the last 30, 60 days, the gangs that are roving, especially our sanctuary cities. And those gangs are, assaulting innocent people who are out enjoying the evening for whatever reason, catching a concert, whatever. And then what's sad about it is you have two or three that are doing the assaulting, and the rest of them are all standing around with their iPhones, filming it, encouraging them to hit them again. And they do that for one reason. They do that because they want to be the first to get their little clip up on YouTube or whatever it might be and get their 15 seconds of fame. When the truth of the matter is, and it's just what you said, you're actually an accomplice to the crime being committed. You're not only failing to report it, you're sitting there filming it and encouraging it. And quite frankly, I think we need to hold these people accountable as well. They need to suffer consequence. People don't respond unless they're held accountable for their actions. And we've lost accountability in this country, and unfortunately.
Yeah. Now, I'm understanding that this may have been something that may have been planned, that they knew that he was a trigger. All they had to
Right.
do was just aim him and let him shoot. So, as I understand that he had been encouraged through various means. And I understand there was a group that they're investigating at this point. I think it was called Armed Gays.
That's correct.
And
The transgender community seems to be heavily involved here.
And at this point, as I understand, the date September 10th kept on rising. And this is not just a couple of days before, but weeks before. So it sounds like this was planned out. And then they had people in the audience saying, well, we're going to turn around and turn ourselves in and said, we did it just to slow things down on the investigation. Am I hearing these things correctly, or am I wrong?
No, you're exactly right. And it actually gets much more complicated. Certainly, I do believe it was a very well orchestrated and well planned assassination. I don't believe it was just an individual that walked by and I didn't like what you said, decided he's going to knock him off. I think this was very well orchestrated. And I think you've got a lot of things that we're discovering now that would substantiate that. One of the things, of course, Ann, when it comes to investigations, always want to follow the money because that provides tremendous leads. And we have discovered now that the Democratic Socialist of America, DSA, and it has 80,000 members across the country. Some of the key members are Cortez, Representative Cortez, the Squad, and Bernie Sanders, and we could go on down the list. And they sent $50,000 to Trey days before the assassination attempt. Sent $20,000 to his, I don't know what to call him, his lover, his girlfriend, his boyfriend. I'm not sure exactly what you call
Kirby?
him. Yeah.
Kirby.
Whatever. There we go. And so here's the question. Why would you send money to an individual who has no prominence in the party? I mean, who turned around and did an assassination days later? You're going to have a hard time explaining to me why the socialists or communists are the same thing. Party would want to send their money ahead of time and substantial money. And we're looking now, we know the FBI has even mentioned that they're looking into foreign intelligence. We know that foreign intelligence agencies offered to assist. That's kind of odd. Why would you do that on a low? I mean, if we're talking about just some idiot kid or somebody that was just mentally disturbed, unless there was something deeper and more nefarious involved. There's so many questions. There's so many questions with the investigation itself. And how did he get that kind of a shot? That was a very difficult shot to make. Under and awning, 30-degree angle, 200 yards. Typically, that's a sniper shot. And to me, to do a sniper shot, you always have what we call a spotter with you who does the calculations for drift, for wind, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying the kid couldn't do that in his head, but I'd like to see where he got his training to be able to handle that. And I haven't had those questions answered.
From what I heard, that his father taught him hunting.
I
And his
agree.
father bought him the firearm to begin with. And so he had been hunting since he was a kid, and they train you to shoot at the neck. But I don't think you shoot a deer at 200 yards.
No, you don't, man. I mean, there's a big
You're in
difference
a
between
blind and
hunting.
you're up close.
Yeah, exactly. big difference between hunting and a sniper shot. And then you take a look at the supposed rifle that was used. Was a Mauser, and I've got one of those. You can't break those down very quickly. So to be tried to be convinced that he broke it down and put it in that little small black knapsack to get away, he didn't have the time to do that. And plus, then when you argue that if you break down a Mauser, it won't fit in there. So what do you do with it? So they said he stuffed it down his pant leg. Well, if you stuff it down your pant leg, you can't run because it locks your knee. So there are some, and then why would you, when you jumped off the roof, why would you stop when you're trying to get away in and reconstruct it, put it back together again, and leave it somewhere to be found? I mean, just questions
so
like
questions.
this. And then I think the biggest thing that caused me the greatest concern is now it's come out that we can't find the bullet, so we can match it to the gun. Somehow the bullet has disappeared. Now their position is it was never found. I mean, you saw there were backdrops behind where Charlie was sitting.
Yeah.
There is plenty of stuff. If it transversed and went all the way through, I still have a hard time believing that it wasn't stopped by the backdrops, that there's not the availability to recover the bullet. That's the first thing you look for. And as you know, in an investigation, how are you going to try to convince me that we can't find it, it's gone? Because now, of course, I have to rule out, how do I really know for sure what weapon it came from? I don't have a bullet to match to the weapon to show that that was the weapon that was used. Now it's all circumstantial. I have to believe what you're telling me. This is not the first time our government's lied to us, and it probably won't be the last.
Oh, jeez. I mean, there's so many questions being raised about that, but someone that has been answering a lot of these questions, want to bring her on with the show with us, is Janice Hisle from the Epoch Times. Good afternoon, Janice. How are you today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Good to hear from you,
Welcome.
Janice.
It's glad to have the Epoch Times back on with us. It's been a while. We missed Mark Tapscott. But, you've been writing about this. So what have you been coming across in your findings? Because I've read some of your articles and they're really interesting.
Well, thank you. Rather than focusing on the investigation, one of my colleagues is actually working on that. I was assigned to try to really go into the community, speak to people about what they're really experiencing in the wake of this horrible event. One of the things that was a little bit surprising to me, having been, prior to coming to the Epoch Times, I was a crime reporter for 27 years for a mainstream press. And during that period of time, I can tell you that there were times when I would go to a neighborhood where the suspect lived, and there was quite a bit of resentment and anger. And, a lot of people would understand that that might be the case. However, in this neighborhood, the people there actually felt really, really badly for the family of the suspect. As a crime reporter, I've always felt like a lot of times, the suspect in a horrible situation, the family did nothing to deserve this of the suspect. And, sometimes, yes, the person comes from a bad family and it's kind of not surprising. But in this case, these people, by all accounts, were upstanding members of the community and tried their very best to raise their children, including this one, in the right way. And therefore, people feel a lot of compassion for that family. They were dropping off cards and flowers at the doorstep. And they said that family is in seclusion, but when they return to the neighborhood, they'll be there with open arms, meals, whatever that family might need during this difficult time.
As I understand, she kind of like broke up a little bit there, but as I understand it, that he came home, did he confess to his parents? Because I know they walked him into the police station.
I was in the court when they first read the charges and explained how things went down according to them. I know there's been questions, and I was overhearing a little bit of your conversation about that before I came on. So yes, this particular situation unfolded when the mother of the suspect saw those initial pictures that were sent out all across America and said, wow, that kind of looks like my son. Contacted the dad, said, hey, I'm really worried. This looks like this could be our kid. And then confronted her son. I guess he initially denied it, if I'm recalling correctly, and said he had been homesick. But there were various things that happened that ultimately led to him agreeing to surrender, turn himself in, etc.
Wow. And as I understand, also the father was in law enforcement at one point?
Actually, that was originally stated, but that is not true.
Okay.
The father actually was acquainted with someone. There was someone in the neighborhood who had been in law enforcement, and that person was apparently playing a role in this whole thing. So one of the biggest things I have to caution against is it seems like anymore, especially in our digital society, Americans are really into conspiracy theories all over the place. And we at the Epoch Times try our very best to avoid giving those any real credence unless there's a real reason to do so, because we would do nothing besides explore conspiracy theories, So we do try to look into them, but we aren't going to give that a lot of oxygen until it's really, really warranted, and we've pinned some things down.
Well, I just want to make one mention, though, because when I was doing my investigation as the events were unfolding and Tyler Robinson was being hunted, there is another young man in Utah also that passed away, and there is a cancer foundation under his name, Tyler Robinson. So I don't want anyone to think that they're one in the same. Please, if you're out there watching me, if you do a search or Google, Tyler Robinson, there's a young kid that passed away from cancer. It's a very good cause. So please donate to that. And as to the other hand, do not mix this fruitcake with this young, innocent kid.
Great point. That's why, as reporters, a lot of times, especially women, bristle when we ask for their age. But we consider that to be part of the person's identification, especially if you have an unusual name, or a very common name, such as Tyler Robinson. There could be a bunch of people, just like there's a bunch of John Smith, Mary Jones. You want to, for example, in this case, the Epoch Times has been reporting it's Tyler James Robinson to try to make that full identification and distinction versus anyone else who might be entirely uninvolved, having their good name kind of wrapped into all of this and smeared.
Yeah, that's the only problem with today's society. And it's so easy to listen to that soundbite and never follow through to the rest of it. But you also wrote a really interesting article about what's happening on the converse side with Tyler James Robinson, or John, what is it? James John, whatever the TJ Robinson, of his love interest, the he, she, Furby person.
Honestly,
that reaction
a bit about the transgender issues, including a lot of the attempts to outlaw these procedures for minors. And one of the questions that I personally have about this whole situation is, okay, so Tyler James Robinson is now dating a guy. It's a man, but this is a man who says he wants to transition to feminize himself. So why don't you just want to be with a girl?
A real woman.
It's kind of confusing to me. I really don't understand this. And I actually know some transgender people, and I haven't had a chance because I've been traveling, and I live here in Ohio, and I literally just got here in Ohio a day or so ago, and I'm trying to get over the whole jet lag, because that's a trip to go to Utah. But I've got to tell you, Utah, the place where these people live, it's absolutely beautiful, and the people were so incredibly kind. I mean, some of the nicest people I've ever met, in terms of not slamming the door in my face, which I've had happen many times over the years. One lady even invited me and our photographer to sit on her patio out in the shade because it was so hot out, brought us water, and oh, by the way, homemade banana bread to go. So that kind of just outpouring of being nice to, I'm in essence an invader in their community, but still this is how they're treating me. And it was really it was an eye-opener to see that. And it also adds to being more puzzled as to how a person who lives around people like this, and by all accounts, this is a very loving, tight-knit community. People walk to the church right around the corner. The church is like the the heart and soul of their community, and to have that kind of loving environment, and then contemplate one of the most heinous, biggest crimes that in our recent memory in our nation, and we've been through a lot, for it to break through that, that's saying a lot. So a political assassination, as it's been characterized. I spoke to a couple professors who told me that they believe this is the first genuine, high-profile political assassination in our country since the 1960s, probably since Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. Now, there were, I don't want to minimize the legislators in Minnesota who were killed. The one legislator was killed, and I think the spouse of the other one, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused on that one, but I'm just saying, yes, there were state lawmakers involved with that shooting. Yeah. But this is the first one with a person who has national and even international recognition. All these international figures have come out and really just lamented the loss of Charlie Kirk as a leader who helped young people to really think a lot more critically. Some people didn't agree with his methods, but he surely got a lot of attention from the young people especially, and from some world leaders who have acknowledged his contribution to political discourse.
Well, what I've noticed is that in the aftermath, organizations that had nothing to do with Charlie Kirk before are starting to reach out to Turning Point USA and saying, hey, listen, we don't have one of your chapters here. Let us help you start one. And we're finding that at these events, a lot of people are coming forward, not just kids, but individuals of our age, because Turning Point USA is not just for the youth, but it's actually for everyone, where we can do something different than kids in college and school can do. And we can unite in doing it and together work together to our main purpose in preserving our constitutional republic.
Well, I can tell you that from all accounts, now we're still very early into this process. It's just over a week ago that all of this unfolded. But we'll see if the momentum continues. But it certainly seems like that, although Charlie Kirk might now physically be gone, that his spirit and his legacy do seem to be pretty destined to continue, and maybe even stronger than ever, at least based on what the momentum we're seeing now, the determination we're seeing now. I spoke to some people who were at the university. There are alumni of Utah Valley University where the shooting happened. One of the gentlemen I spoke to, his grandfather actually started that university, and he told me that he feels the most fitting tribute to Charlie Kirk would be to come up with a degreed program where you would get a certificate or degree in like civil discourse and how to properly debate people.
We used to be called Debate Society.
But he wants to get this composed specifically in the memory of Charlie Kirk at that institution. He was passing a petition when I last visited there on Tuesday. I had an interview with him at that time. I haven't yet written that story. In fact, I was in the process of writing that when I had to jump off and come to you guys. So it's something that our audience doesn't even know.
No,
that's my print audience are online.
Because I came through college in the 70s.
Yes, go ahead.
And that was at that time, you were able to have a civil discourse. And because I was always challenging my professors who had a tendency to lean left, and I would give them a valid debate in the classroom. And they, in the end, they encouraged me to join the Debate Society because there was only two of us arguing on the right and the rest of them were all on the left. But we didn't lose an argument. That's the whole thing. And this is what is lost in today's society is we can disagree. And we can agree to disagree, but there's no need to escalate to violence. So, here I'm going to ask you, Michael, because you've been sitting quietly in the side. As these groups are now starting to go out, and we're going to have a bunch of vigils going on this weekend, what would be your recommendation for safety? Because a lot of people are afraid to go because of what has happened, and they're afraid they may be targeted if they show up. So what's your recommendation? I know what I would say, but I want to hear from you.
Well, thank you, Ann. Obviously they have a valid concern. because this is a target against conservatives. It wasn't just a target against Charlie. It was a target to silence the voice of conservatives and to identify who they were. And so I think what we have to do in this particular situation is we can't respond with fear, because that's exactly what the leftists would have us to do. So we do need to participate, but we need to be more vigilant. We need to be more alert. I'd like to tell everybody if they have the chance, make sure you wear a bulletproof vest. But I don't have enough of those to go around for all of our law enforcement officers, so can't make that recommendation. But I think vigilance is a key, and I think communication is a key. Listen. It's amazing to me. I've made critical. I talked to the administration about this. Our bureau, the FBI, is supposed to be dealing with domestic terrorism. That's been one of their charges for years. I can tell you, with all my experience in law enforcement, with active shooter cases, as far back as I pulled them, there's always been what we call a cursor that's come up beforehand. They've posted something, they've said something, and we just kind of ignored it till after the fact. I think it's time we quit ignoring. Because this is a very real thing. Their hatred is very real. Their bitterness, if you want to use that word, is a very real thing. And they're determined to regain power has become so consuming that they don't think rationally and logically anymore. They just simply are focused in. You're saying something that's encouraging people to be conservative. That's not what I want. That doesn't help me get back into power. You need to be eliminated. And what's scary about this is they're no longer just saying, if you're in a position to exert your viewpoints, you need to be eliminated. Now they're just saying, if you're in a position to influence, that means average citizens. That means people with a voice, not necessarily people who hold high-profile public offices. So I think it's something we have to take very much to mind and to have an awareness. But to answer your question specifically, Ann, if you want to, I would encourage people to go, because I think it's important to send the message that you can't silence this is what this country is all about. You can't silence our viewpoint. You can't silence our acts. So we're going to participate. But to protect ourselves, make sure you're vigilant. Make sure you're not in a position to where you can be lonely picked off. Make sure you stay with the crowd.
If I may interject.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. You haven't spoken yet, Mr. Bennett. Go ahead.
I said this, here. I mentioned this last week. If these universities are going to have outdoor events like this, where there's, the atmosphere is politically charged, they need to, because most of them have security forces, campus police forces, they need to start up a drone division. So when they have these events, you got eyes in the sky over these buildings. It doesn't cost a lot to get a drone. You can get them for less than $100. And I'm sure with the endowment of some of these universities, they could probably afford 100 of them. But once he died, Charlie Kirk died last week, I said to myself, the left just lost the midterms. And I really believe that.
Mm.
Interesting. So to follow up on the points that you, Mr. Bennett, and also you, Mr. Letts, have both made, first of all, in regard to the drones, I'll go in reverse order. The drones, it's interesting that you bring this up, because I just, before leaving for Utah, finished interviewing police in 2 cities, one in my home state here in Ohio and another in California. The Ohio Police Department with Cincinnati Police, they've just started a drone as first responders division. And Chula Vista Police in California has been doing this since 2018. They were the first in the nation. So that's another story that I'm working on. Haven't had a chance to finish. It's kind of like the story of my life lately. Quote, haven't had a chance to finish yet, because everything is happening so fast. So excellent point on your part. I have seen some reporting that maybe there were some drones deployed there, but I have not independently verified that reporting. So it'd be interesting to see some of that information. I think law enforcement keeps under wraps, but we'll see if anything about that I can substantiate, or if we're able to, pin that down. And now also in regard to the whole, a lot of times there's a sign, as you pointed out, Mr. Letts, there's a sign that this person may have been leaning towards some really radical, violent behavior. And that was actually a point the neighbors raised. One neighbor raised this issue. She said, I thought I knew my neighbors, but how well do we really know our neighbors? A lot of neighborhoods don't quote unquote neighbor at all. I mean, this neighborhood did, they did kind of have a lot more interaction than where I live. The neighborhood I live in is a suburb where most people just kind of go in their house, go to work, come back. They go in the back deck instead of the front porch. I grew up in a front porch type community where I think people were more likely to interact. So the other thing is that there is part of the investigation that the feds are doing is about some of these statements that were made on some of these social media platforms. I'm not familiar with this Discord platform that I guess a lot of gamer types people use. But from what I've seen, reporting that I and my colleagues have done, is that the feds are definitely looking at how in the world would it just be some quote unquote coincidence that this person is posting something's going to happen to Charlie Kirk on September 10th. Boy, won't that be an interesting day. And there also was a video that apparently was taken down that may be tied to somebody close to the suspect that was entitled Charlie Kirk Dead at 31 video. So that's all part of the investigation right now. So it'll be very interesting to see how all this shakes out. And in addition to that, when I was at the court hearing, I've been doing this job long enough to recognize what's known as a suicide vest or suicide smock. I do believe that the defendant was wearing one of those during this hearing. I would be willing to bet that with 98% certainty that is the garment that I saw him wearing. And it fits with him saying initially that he thought about killing himself rather than face going to jail. So the suicide, just so you know, that particular garment is fashioned from a specific type of material that can't be bunched up and like put around the person's neck to try to hang yourself, for example. And so I actually remember years ago, vaguely remember talking to a person who was involved in developing this garment. So, there is a lot of concern in regard to this person's mental state. The fact that this person's now been charged with a capital offense means that there's a smaller pool of attorneys that are even qualified. You have to be death penalty certified, as they say, to handle a case like this. And one is going to be appointed for him. And then we look at those are just the state charges. What are the federal charges possibly going to do? If the feds come in, it most likely will supersede or take precedence over the state charges, which was what we've been reporting on that happened this just a few days ago.
Well, there's so much to grasp in that. A friend of mine, Sam Faddis, who was a former CIA, wrote an article. He's got And magazine questioning whether or not we should have some form of MI5 that would go and look for something like this. But isn't that the job of the FBI at this point? Shouldn't they be doing that job? Did they fall down on the job? Did they, Michael?
Well, let me put it this way. Your definition of fall down. Do they have this information? Without question. I mean, I know I've been in the intelligence community. They have the information. Question is, what have they done with it? In the past, they haven't done anything with it. So is it because of a directive? Because of a philosophy? And within the high up leadership, and I'm talking about leadership outside of the bureau, I'm talking about leadership at the top, that wanted to keep this stuff quiet and allow it to move forward, because you got to understand this advances an agenda. This is a great narrative. You, Ann, said when we first started this show, what was the first reaction? Boy, we need to get rid of these guns, don't we? It feeds on so many of the liberal causes that they have used that are just totally devoid of reality. But, I've been in politics too long, and sometimes, and I got to tell you, politics works, they think it works best when there is a cause that they can make emotional, we don't want to solve it now. We just want to keep it out there. That helps us raise money every time around, keeps people fired up, keeps people upset, making sure that we can get you to the polls to vote for me when it does, etc. Sometimes there's not the will to solve problems. They want to keep them out there because they're using them for other purposes. And so tying back in with the question, yeah, following the question that was just raised, is it a lack of them? I didn't know the information was there, or is it a lack that we know where the information's at? We know what's going on, but we're following directives, and some stuff we take serious, and some stuff we don't. Unfortunately, I tend to think that's probably more accurate to be the latter than it is the former. That no, we just didn't realize that they were posting this. So I'm not going to buy that one.
No, I find it hard to believe.
Is it possible that there could be, a lack of manpower to really delve into these thousands or millions of potential wackos? I mean,
I will agree with you
I like to say wackos.
I will agree with you to an extent, but I will also tell you that isn't it interesting when it comes to conservative issues that they can suddenly dispatch to a school board meeting, or we think that Catholicism may be trying to do something, that we find the manpower very quickly to zero in on that, but we can't find the manpower because we're not just talking about this case. I mean, I've looked at it in the past on the precursors, what we call them, and there were precursors for Uvalde. How many kids were killed there? I mean, you're telling me that we don't want to follow up on leads to avoid having kids murdered? I mean, it just leads me to believe that we follow up on what directives have been sent on what parties it's affecting. And if it pushes liberal causes, this is in the past, so this is not now. But understand, you say, well, this is a conservative administration now. Yeah, but it's only been there for 6 months. And we all understand that, we've had put leadership in place to try to drain the swamp. You're not going to drain something that deep in 6 months. I can promise you that. We're talking about decades of, corruption to put in there.
I think the FBI lost their footing when they stopped recruiting from law enforcement and they recruited lawyers. And there's so much being lawyers in the FBI than being actual law enforcement individuals. They used to go to NYPD and come out and if you're Italian or Irish, come on, guys.
Well, now the FBI recruits, everything but law enforcement. If you're an accountant, you're a psychologist, you're a political science major. I never did understand the logic behind that. Other than we're supposed to be diversifying. And you saw where DEI got us. So, that went over real well.
Well, the FBI is nothing more than a glorified Zoran Mendavi police force. This is what New York City is going to end up with.
You're exactly right. So I appreciate the question being raised. Is it because of lack of manpower? And yes, we can always use more manpower. And is it a lack of the fact that they just didn't have enough to catch it? Sort of. That could be a little bit of the answer, but I think it's much deeper than that.
I'm thinking also sometimes, maybe not in this case in particular, but say, we've all been around people who, as a figure of speech, would say, oh, you make me so mad I could just kill you. And they're really, really, I'm going to kill him if he says that again. How do you discern if that's just a figure of speech or an actual threat?
I think that can be so simplified from this standpoint. You and I are chatting, and I said, I don't like you. You talk about that again, I'm going to smack you around. That's a conversation you and I are having, okay? Yeah. But when I decide I'm going to take it to social media,
right?
That takes it to a different level, and that's where I think we should concentrate. Yes,
in terms of law enforcement trying to sift through and figure out what is just either wishful thinking, a sick joke, and a real legit threat, to sort through that.
I think the easiest way for that to be handled is we go after our social media first. Now, if I find out you're doing some real threats on social media, then you and I need to sit down and have a chat. And then I need to find out the other people around you to say, are you saying this not just on social media, but you're telling everybody else to say, now I've got a case to work. But if it's just somebody calls, say, hey, I heard her say that she was going to smack this guy because, she was mad about something. That's really a different situation. That's not what we're talking about.
Well, let me ask you that.
I'm sorry, Chris. We got 3 minutes left, so just make it short, okay?
Okay. Is it true that the NSA are tuned into key words like a threat to the president or whatever?
Yes.
And they can pick it up and investigate it. Why can't they do that with anything else?
Well, our
They
intelligence
probably
community
are.
can do a lot of things, and they are doing a lot of things. It gets back to what we just talked about. What's the directive? What am I supposed to tell everybody, and what do I keep to myself?
Mm.
And I don't think we can answer
Priority.
that question today.
Well,
Yeah.
now I'm just going to end up with this one final thing because I pulled this up. Happened on the 15th. The two men were arrested in Utah for an incendiary device they were attempting to place on the Fox 13 news van, which brings into question the security of the media as they try to cover it, conservative media as they're covering it, as well as the fact that both of these happen to have been Arabs. I don't know if they're Arab Americans, but of Arab background. Habib Nassar and Adil Justice Ahmed Nassar. I guess they're related.
Came through the border, huh?
Yes,
yeah.
that's correct. They are illegal, and we are looking at that right now. But that's another big issue. We have a tremendous amount of Islamic jihadists that have moved into this country that are determined to destroy us, and I don't see us putting the effort in that either, quite frankly.
No. Matter of fact, I talk about reading I don't know if it was Newsweek or Times or one of the magazines back in, I think it was 89 or 90, talking about OTMs other than Mexicans over the border on the southern border. And again, it was, like I said, 89 or 90, and they were finding Qurans and prayer shawls and signs written in Chinese. So it's not just those of Arab descent, jihadist Muslims, but also those from China and from other Chinese allies of China too. So yeah, our borders are porous and we're not solved yet. But guys, we're out of time. I want to thank you both for joining us. It had so much fun. Michael, I hope to see you Monday night down here.
We're working on the schedule. I'd love to have it.
Okay. Great. So Janice, with the Epoch Times, people can find you there. Michael, people can find you at investusa.org. Donate and get a vest to a law enforcement officer. Save a life. I say God bless and good night.
God bless. Thank you for what you're doing. Keep it up. You're making a difference. Janice, I say the same to you. God bless y'all. Of course,
thank you very much.
You're always a good blessing to us. God bless y'all. Bless America. Take care.
All right.
All right. Absolute wonderful guest. And I'm hoping Michael will be with us for our meeting on Monday. I'm crossing my fingers because we got a lot to talk about here. We've got our local sheriff who will also be here too. He's a good friend of mine, PJ. But that's all we got for now. I do have guests lined up for next week, but don't ask me who they are.
Okay.
But I'll get that out as soon as I can. So until then, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and we will see you same bat time, same bat station next week. Take
I'm praying for this land I love, America, America, the home of the free. But there are people making plans to change America. They've no respect for her or what matters most to me. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Long for the friends I have loved and lost. And I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America. Do you hear our battle cry across America? We've got to rescue her. You know it's up to me and you to see the truth behind their lies. Don't change America. God bless America and the red, white, and blue. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Long for the friends I have loved and lost. And I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom I fought America. For the friends we have loved and lost, and we still believe in God we trust, in the freedom our forefathers granted us. We know it's not too late to save America. Save America. Let's save America. Together we can save